Hello and welcome to the Dream is Real podcast. This is the place if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest in New York real estate. Before we get started, make sure you like, share, subscribe, turn on your notifications. We're going to continue to bring you great content. Today, I'm excited to meet with Emmanuel Rosario of MLB Residential.
Yes.
Handle mortgages and funding, so always a big part of the real estate process.
Absolutely. A very big part, and a lot of real estate agents that you talk to and a lot of people when they first start looking into how to get started in buying a house, right? If they're a first-time home buyer or even if they're just planning on making a move, that's usually the first step.
Right.
Talking to a lender.
Absolutely. Get pre-approved. Make sure you know what to look for.
What you're looking for, right?
We're definitely going to get into some, you and I had some great conversations even prior to this, so I'm excited. But let's talk about you, your journey here so far, how you got into the industry.
Yeah, so I've been around real estate my entire life. So I come from a real estate background. I've had my license for 12 or 13 years now. And my mother, who's a broker as well, broker owner in Patchogue, but she's been doing real estate for as long as I can remember, maybe as long as I've been alive. And that's kind of how I got into it, answering phones for her, to going on showings. She would take me in the car. We kind of, listening to music. It was a big thing. So I've always been exposed to it. And then from, training agents over the years and managing an office for 5, going through the transaction coordination, that's where I learned the most, seeing the ins and outs of each individual deal, seeing how things can, go wrong and how things are fixed, and the conversations with the attorneys and the title company, has really given me an all-inclusive, background. But I saw that there was a lot of things that could be fixed. And as I grew in the industry, I realized that my strengths had more to do with the numbers, the analytics, and the explanations. So explaining things to people, I really like the starting process of helping people with the homes, but not so much and then I started to realize that I gravitated more towards the financing.
So let's go back to the kid in the back of the car going to the showings. At what point did you realize that you wanted to be in the industry to some degree?
Well, it took a lot of exploration. I've always been an out-of-the-box kind of guy, so it never was a strong pull in any one direction, but just being exposed to it and seeing how it just helped our family get through some really hard times, I knew that there was a ton of opportunities. And then as I got older and wiser, I started to learn about investing and financing and how it's just a really great investment most of the time, when you compare it to other options as far as like risk versus reward goes. So I knew that it was a place I wanted to just be involved.
So gravitating from the real estate side now into the mortgage side, what are some similarities and what do you think is the benefit of being able to understand, both sides of it?
Right. So I think that my main thing going into it was I saw that real estate agents and even the buyers there was a couple of things, and even myself, that we struggled with when it came to working with different lenders and different banks. A lot of times it can cause issues if you don't have a clear line of communication, if there was disorganization and things like that. So I didn't want people to have to go through the same pains that I was seeing or that I went through. And I thought, hey, I can do that a bit better. I can keep track of all the things that they sent me and not have to ask for the same documents over and over again. I can make sure that if something changes, there's an update, regardless of the time. I'm available. Just being more available. That was a big, complaint was communication. So I guess I just saw there were some issues and some opportunities to fix things on the mortgage side of things, and so I set out to be that solution.
You bring up something that's very important. And when I say important, the mortgage aspect, it's not just important, it's absolutely vital to most, unless you're coming to the table with cash, right?
then it's a moot point.
And I think you bring up something equally as important when you are on the other side and you're waiting to find out about the funding. You're kind of waiting with bated breath, and you want to believe that the person that is working on your behalf has everything that they need and knows where to go.
Right.
Because when it comes to funding, whether it's whether it's just residential real estate, commercial investments, there's a lot of things that could be barriers to getting the deal done. And you mentioned being outside of the box. So maybe we can chat there for a minute. You know, where are some of the areas that can be barriers where you need somebody to work outside of the box?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to clarify, I did pass the National Safe Test to get the NMLS licensing to become a full-blown mortgage loan originator. So right now, my capacity is more of like a concierge.
Okay.
Where I'm coordinating with the loan officer, the attorney, the home buyer, the real estate agent, the processor, underwriter, and I'm kind of the glue that holds everybody together and makes sure that everybody's communicating, that things aren't missed, and that the buyer is getting the explanations that helps them feel more comfortable with what's going on. Because a lot of times it's, hey, we need this, or this is happening, and they don't really understand sometimes, and that could be frustrating. So I look to make sure I can keep everybody involved, tied in, and the buyer as comfortable as possible with the whole process.
Very cool. I hope you don't mind me making an observation here, but your journey into real estate was very much following your mother, who was the agent, who, you said answering phones, going to showings, working at the administrative level, and then becoming part of it. It's very similar to you taking the same journey. And what I see as a value to that is, you're going to know the intricacies of every step. Right.
Yeah,
so,
no, I have.
So I do think that's a value, instead of me saying, "Oh, I'm going to migrate from this industry
XYZ,
that has not,
right.
XYZ, and then come over and do something new. And now I'm a broker now because I took a test." It seems like you're going to know at every level what the client needs. So
yeah. And just to add into a little bit more into that, over the last year, because I was transitioning from being an office manager, real estate agent, studying for the test, because it's a pretty big test. It's a national state test that has like a 50-something% pass rate. So I got an 81 first try.
Very good.
And during that time, I just needed something else to kind of do. And my friend, who's a contractor, had some work. He needed availability because he's growing, but he couldn't take somebody on full time. So I was able to actually help him on some projects and actually learned it, like actual working in the house too. So I was able to see, behind the walls. I was able to see different problems they ran into with plumbing and electric. I was able to see how they solved different issues with trimming and getting things to measure out, and what they pointed out with different things like the widths of the wood, and if it's old wood and certain things. So yeah, I really have learned a lot of different things about houses.
and there are certain loan types where the condition of the house or what projects need to get done, that's an important piece to the funding, right?
Yeah, not everything is going to be good in the bank's eyes. In the end of the day, the house is the collateral that secures the financing. So they want to make sure that it's not going to be a liability for them. And so there are certain things they look for. And those things come with different costs. So knowing what those costs are can be important to keeping a deal together. So
to the extent that you can speak to it at this point, give us some examples of how projects in the house or condition of the house can impact a loan.
Yeah. So if you find something where a house and you're going to put an offer in, and it's during that inspection period, certain things can come up, and just knowing whether or not those are going to be a major issue can help save time. So simple things like adding a handrail comes up for safety concerns. Like that's something that needs to be in place. A lot of times it's electrical issues. You need to make sure that if it's near a water source, that it has a CFGI. If I'm pretty sure that's the right term, but yeah, it's a particular, it needs to be a specific thing. Also, the roof has to be free of any leaks. There can't be cracks in the windows, but some of those are more expensive to fix than others.
Sure.
So if it's just a handrail and maybe 2 outlets, that's fine. I'm comfortable going forward. The buyer and the seller know what they're getting into. But if it's something like the roof needs a repair, that becomes kind of a bigger issue.
Hi, my name is Tyrone. I'm the owner and trainer here at Fly Fitness. We work with children of all ages, sports-specific training, soccer, basketball, lacrosse, football, you name it, we do it here. We also work with the beginner, the person that has never been in the gym before. We get you from point A, point B, and we take you through the alphabet of training. We also do rehab, ankles, back, knees, shoulders. The older we get, the more fragile we are. So those things that I just mentioned, those are things that we're definitely going to need help with. That's what we specialize in here at Fly Fitness. Come and join us.
So when you do, let's say you're a buyer and you fall in love with the house, but there are some issues there. How is that normally resolved to give the bank confidence to be able to move forward?
Yeah, so that does come down to the more of the real estate side and making sure that something could be negotiated between whether it's the seller's responsibility or the buyer's. Sometimes it could be split. So that has a lot to do with the real estate negotiation. The bank just wants to make sure that it's done before, the deal is funded.
Got it.
So as long as that could be figured out beforehand, then it's not necessarily a deal killer, but early signs and just being able to know what's coming across your desk is helpful. And if you can help the real estate agent in negotiating because of my experience, now I'm also able to give value to the real estate agent, value to the buyer. Hey guys, don't even bother with that one. If it's a buried oil tank and that needs to be, checked on, and that could open up a whole can of worms. Guys, just move on. I know you love the house, but that may not be good for you because of their either limited, capital, or maybe the seller just being really firm.
Right. And that could, let's be honest, time is critical, right?
So they could lose another deal while they're trying to fix that
exactly
one.
Right. You could be in love with this house, but the next house, I mean, we all do that, right?
Yeah.
We just, this is it. I know it's it. And then next thing you know, you see something else and you're like, I'm glad I didn't.
Yeah. So one thing I learned, and that was hard for me on the real estate side, was how emotional of a process it is, right? Because for the buyers and the sellers, and not that I'm, have any trouble with emotion, with emotional intelligence or anything like that. But for me, I like that the numbers on the math side were just definite. It works or it doesn't. It was, this is what you can do, this is what you can't. So that kind of just helped with my personality. But I definitely understood, and I was very patient with people. It's just, I was just very much so. And sometimes in sales, you have to be able to push people a little bit, and not like in a super salesy or in like
to encourage.
Encouragement. People need a lot of encouragement when it's an emotional roller coaster. And I wasn't
one of the
necessarily
biggest purchases, if not the biggest purchase you'll ever make in your entire life.
Exactly. And there's a lot of nerves and buyer's remorse and things like that, where they're having remorse before they even go through with the deal, So, and that part of it was tricky for me, only because I wasn't good at, encouraging people. I'm not necessarily like the biggest cheerleader, so to speak. When it came to like the emotional side of things, I could be there to listen. I could be there to understand. I could explain things very well. But when they needed that extra push, I'm not the pushy guy.
Got it. Yeah. Got it. So, well, I mean, some of the fiduciary responsibilities of a real estate agent, right, is loyalty, care. And a lot of that is telling people, telling the client, right, what they need to hear. Maybe not necessarily what they want to hear, but what they need to hear. You gave an example just a second ago of, you love this house, but there are underlying issues that you may really want to consider. And I think when the smoke clears, all of us appreciate that person, whether they're somebody who's, super close to you in your life, or whether they're a professional that you're, that you're trusting, to be able to say, I know where your emotions are going. I say to my kids all the time, right?
Here's the hard truth.
How you feel and what is true are often two very different things, right?
Different things.
So no, I appreciate that, how you've presented that so far. It's a matter of having the level of care to not only, serve someone where they're at, to help them with what they want, but also to tell them what they need.
Yeah, and I felt like that was easier on the lending side because that line is a little bit more clear. What they can do and what they can't. Whereas on the real estate side, there's a lot of, imagination and ideas that run away when they see they see their family in the house, and they've already made plans with how they're going to, fix up a room. And then so I guess just being like very empathetic was my struggle, because I would get sucked into the emotional thing instead of being able to stand outside and tell them exactly what was.
Got it.
Yeah, that was probably what was happening more so. But yeah, you touched on some of the creative solutions too, which I think is one of my strengths.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the potential barriers, but not just stop at the barriers. Talk about even potential solutions to those. I could think of a few areas, whether it be around credit, whether it be around loan type, whether it be, but maybe you can give some examples of what are some potential barriers that can be overcome.
Yeah. So I mean, you mentioned a few. So what we look for, or what the loan officers that I'm working closely with are looking for when we have a consultation, are basically three things, right? Which we refer to as ICE. And that's income, credit, and assets or equity.
Okay.
So with those three things, a lot of people already have an idea of what they can and can't do And sometimes they're nervous to kind of talk to people about where they're at.
Sure.
They're not sure, how it's going to be looked at. There's a lot of different fears that are around, talking about where you're coming from and where you want to be. Because sometimes the gap could be pretty big. And then it's like, well, how do I get there? And there could be some fear of, judgment, stuff like that. But I think that the best thing you could do is just the best way over it is right through it. And just figuring out, okay, where am I at? Who can I talk to that I'm comfortable with? Who can I talk to that isn't going to be, judging me, but is going to be trying to help me?
Somebody who's solution driven is saying, yeah, we've got it. Because in more
I've seen everything. I've been there myself. So it's not like something to be embarrassed about. It's just something that we need to talk about to be able to help you figure out how to get to point B.
That makes perfect sense. So let's talk about, let's go down the ICE, right? So let's talk about income. What are some barriers to income? I know not having enough is definitely one, but also type of income, right? Yeah.
So banks look at your income, and when the loan officers are looking at documents, they're looking at to see where your income's coming. They're really just looking at how predictable it is, right? So there's like traditional income if you work for a company and you have a W-2. Right now, if you have 2 years of those, we're able to see a pretty steady pattern, and it's fair to expect that to continue, right? But then there's different types of income. So now, let's say you're a business owner or a 1099 employee, right? So or self-employed, contractor, independent contractor. So in those cases, the income could be a little bit less predictable. And also there's expenses and things like that, which can, for, tax purposes, your income is perceived as less than what's actually coming in because you have expenses that you're responsible for. So in those cases, we do have solutions. There are a lot of different products that are good for figuring out how we can make the most of what their income is, or how we can make sure that the bank sees it in a way that we understand what we can expect you to be able to afford to repay.
I mean, from the underwriter standpoint, it's really about visibility and predictability based upon what they can see, right? So what are some other ways outside of direct income versus expense that you can, or ways or documents that you can present that sometimes give those who are making the decision a better view?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Some of the things that we're looking at right now that people are able to use instead of traditional W-2s, let's say if they're a 1099 employee or they own a corporation, are the 1099s only. So we can look at 1099s only. We could look at 12 months of bank statements. There's also a verification of employment letter that an employer might be able to issue. And we would just be looking at whatever the employer puts that person makes and so on and so forth. And that would be great for people who earn a lot of cash, or like tip earners, if they get tips and stuff like that, where their income isn't so clear. Like you said, the visibility, that letter can help. There's also profit and loss statement, and it may have to be put together. There's different there's different guidelines to these things. So like for the profit and loss, that has to be issued by like a CPA, or it depends on the product. And that's where the loan officers would be, the ones that I'm working with, would be able to explain those intricacies and get exactly what we need to look at and how we can put it together to paint the right picture to optimize or to make the most optimal outcome.
Got it. So you can get creative there. And on the credit side, how do you get creative there?
So credit is credit, and credit's kind of tricky because it just a lot of time, credit, whatever comes up when that's run, and we're able to do a soft pull. And part of the initial consultation, what the loan officer will do with permission is to do a soft check.
Oh, so you are able to do a soft check to.
Yeah, so it won't hurt the credit, but it gives us a nice picture of what's showing up. So the best thing we can do when it comes to that is a loan officer can either refer to a credit specialist who can help to do certain things to improve the score in a short amount of time, and we can also make suggestions as well.
And I think it's important if anybody's listening right now, because we have viewers that are very seasoned in the industry, and then we have those that are saying, "Hey, can I buy a house?" A hard pull is when an inquiry goes on the credit report. A soft pull is basically allows the professional like your firm to get a view of the credit without having to inform the credit bureaus that you're seeking credit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that is how it works. And then if you have a couple of different, and we always recommend in any industry with your health or with your financial health that you get, multiple opinions. It's okay to get second opinions and stuff like that. So if you're getting your credit soft pulled more than once in a short period, it's also clear that you're shopping around.
Okay.
So it's kind of like when you're looking for a car, and we're able to see what's showing up as far as revolving debt, installments, because those things are all factored into your debt to income ratio.
Right.
And that helps us figure out what your ability to repay is.
Got it. So are there different programs based upon credit score, or even, I guess debt to income ratio, that's pretty cut and dry, right? That's your income.
The debt to income ratios and different programs and products, they do work differently. So there is a bunch of different factors that go into it, and one product may be a more lenient than another.
Okay, got it. So again, back to the creativity standpoint, getting someone who can take a look at your overall profile and say, hey, here are some of the options. Or I think you had mentioned before, if you have to refer to a credit specialist, at least and again, knowledge is power to some degree, but it's really understanding how to apply that knowledge afterwards.
Right.
And
so it's kind of like putting a big puzzle together. So we look at all the different puzzle pieces, and we communicate with the person to figure out what they want that picture to look like, right? Because it's not our picture. In the end of the day, we're not trying to help them figure out how to do what we want them to do. It's how can we help you get to where you want to be. So we have to look at all the puzzle pieces and see if we can make that picture come together. There might be some pieces missing, like the credit score may not be where it needs to be, or maybe they own a business but it hasn't been open for long enough. So those are certain things that we can help build a roadmap and come up with a plan to acquire those pieces so we can kind of get the whole picture.
And it's amazing how once you know what's needed, how you can put a plan in place to get it done. And then, I mean, even if you came to somebody and said, this plan might take about 18 months, when you're excited about going for a home, you're like, but I mean, how quick does 18 months, 24 months
it's
go?
It's going to happen anyway. Next thing you know, it's been 2 years since you thought about buying a house the last time. But the difference is if you talk to somebody who can kind of put a plan together, is that at least you've been productive that whole time, and now you can get to the place where you are finally loan ready, if it's something that you've been dreaming of.
Are you a homeowner who is looking to expand your home so you have enough space for everything you need in your home? Or do you want to renovate because the interior just doesn't work for your needs anymore? Or are you someone who's looking for a property, but nothing that you've been looking at really fits what you need? Well, my name is Catherine Serrano Sosa. I'm the founder of Rooted Architecture Studio, and I can help you bring those renovations and adjustments to life. At Rooted Architecture Studio, we focus on creating meaningful, inclusive, client-centric designs for homeowners and investors. We walk you through the whole process of designing construction and making sure that you understand what's going on, but take away all the layers so you can sit back and just focus on the deliverables of what we're designing. We make sure that your non-negotiables are integrated and your wants and needs are integrated to the best of our abilities. So if you are looking to do anything that I just discussed, or just have ideas that you might want to talk about what the possibilities may be, give us a call and reach out through social media as well, and we'll be happy to help you. And if you're looking for a new property, make sure to connect with Dream Select Realty. They're the right people to help you find the right property for you and make sure that your needs are integrated. Or if we're renovating, we can all collaborate together to bring that vision to life.
So let's talk about the equity piece. Mm-hmm. How does equity fall into this equation?
Right. So for pretty much most loan types are out there, and because I'm not fully licensed, I don't want to talk too much about the different options. But since we're talking on a general scale, there are some, and putting my realtor hat on, since I still am, still have that in my back pocket. They require down payments. Most products out there. There are a few that don't. Specifically, like many people have heard that the Veterans Affairs loans, the VA loans, right, you may be able to do 100% financing. But for the most part, most people are going to be needing to come up with something. And then there's also closing cost, right? So there's cost to actually buying a house, whether that's paying the attorney, whether that's, prepaying taxes, putting money in escrow. There's a bunch. So understanding that is another thing that we make sure we take care of from the very beginning so that there aren't any surprises and we really don't leave anything out. So we don't just go over what it would cost for the financing. We go over what it would cost for the entire process.
Got it.
That way we make sure that we don't leave people in a situation where 3 months from now, 6 months from now, they got the house they love, but then they find themselves in a tough situation. We don't ever want to create that for anybody. So we want to make sure that they have reserves. We want to talk to them about that in terms of financial responsibility. And we also want to talk to them about what they're comfortable with making as far as payments go and what they can afford, as opposed to just what they're qualified for.
Right. And I think that is the major value of, even if you're out there thinking all right, I might be looking to go in this direction. I've rented for a long time. Let's go back to the old G.I. Joe. Knowing is half the battle, right? You've got to go sit down with somebody who can look at everything, non-judgmental, like you said.
Yeah, just painting a picture.
And like you said, you've seen pretty much everything.
Yeah. We've seen it all, especially on the contractor side. We go into houses that need complete complete rehabilitation. The demo guys are in there for a whole week, just getting stuff out. So. It's just the situation. Everybody's situation is differently. So I'm in no position to make judgments. I'm just here to figure out solutions.
Yes, figure out how do we get it done. What are some other tips that you could give anyone out there who's looking to get a mortgage in this current market? Again, speaking just generally, the current market, with home prices having gone up and rates being higher than they were years ago, which is common knowledge. It's definitely be a difficult market for some. But I think the first step is figuring out where you stand in that market, and then what options are available to you. So when you're talking about equity, you do need, a lot of times you're going to need to come up with some funding to be able to buy a house. But there are options out there too that I like to go over with some of my buyers. Federal grants from Suffolk County has one, Brookhaven Township has one. There's grants and down payment assistance, that are available for people. That's really compelling because there are programs out there that if you don't know about them, you cannot take advantage of them.
Yeah, and depending on the person, it could make sense for you. It doesn't make sense for everybody because there are certain things you have to learn about and adhere to. There's some strings attached, so to speak.
Sure.
But maybe you have to live in the house for a certain amount of time, or a part of it becomes due back, or it all, whatever the case is. But that's part of the research and learning process. But we help to get you on the path to see if there's an option that is good for you. And sometimes that can be, the amounts could be, substantial. It could make or break whether or not it's possible for you right now in this market. 20 to 30,000, some of these grants they offer out.
Wow. So how would somebody go about looking into what grants are available? Is that at the municipal level? Is that, obviously they can call you,
yeah.
right?
If they reached out to me, I actually put together sort of a form that I sent through email with all of the different municipalities with the phone numbers, email addresses, and the links to the websites to start that journey. But it does take some research. Without a guide, or at least somebody who put that all together, you kind of just have to search around and start asking those questions. And
sure. But if you have a professional who's got their finger on the pulse,
Yeah,
they could say, hey, the town of Babylon just came out with it. And how often do these programs pop up and go away? Is it fairly...
Yeah, so some of them are like a lottery, or some of them are like first come, and when funds run out, that's it. Some of them have application deadlines. So it just, again, takes a little bit of research going into each one and seeing what those individual guidelines are. Some of them require you to go to like a course, so to speak, or like to sit down in a orientation or classroom where they have a bunch of industry professionals, and they cover a lot of ground in those. And that's just to kind of help alleviate some of the, demand that they have for people asking questions, right? So instead of them having to pick up the phone 100 times a day and keep answering the same questions, they'll direct everybody to that course that they offer regularly, where you could just do it in that setting, group setting.
Is there ever criteria that's pretty consistent across the board, or is every program kind of different in its own right?
Yeah, I would say every program's is a bit different. They have different things, and some of them are restricted to certain locations and areas because they could be coming from like a township or a county, and then other, the federal ones may have their own restrictions and guidelines. So, and I'm not an expert in those things, but I do have but I'm able to point people in the right direction where they can talk to the ones who know more.
Awesome. Well, I think that's kind of where we leave off is to find somebody who's going to be an advocate for you, to be able to look out and get creative where you need to get creative. Sounds like that's something that you're prepared to do for those that engage with you. Why don't you tell our audience how to get in touch with you?
Okay. So, right now, I think just changed my Instagram handle to ejr.homes. So EJR is my initials, Emmanuel J. Rosario. .homes, so that should pull it up there. Otherwise, my cell phone number, 631-494-8544. That's probably the best way to reach me right now. And then we could maybe put the email address in the description.
Yep, sure. And give the full name of your firm once again so they could look you up.
Yeah, so the bank that I'm with right now and the loan officers I'm working with are at MLB, that's Making Lives Better, Residential Lending, and we are officed in Hauppauge.
Awesome. Making lives better.
Yeah.
Love that.
That's the goal. I think if you help enough people in the world, it will all come back to you in the end of the day.
Amazing. I agree with exactly that thing.
It's all about
So thank you so much for being with us today, Emmanuel, and thank you for watching. This is the Dream is Real podcast. If you're enjoying this content, like, share, subscribe, turn on your notifications. We want to keep going here and bringing back great professionals like Emmanuel here.
Thank you.
Check us out on Instagram and TikTok at Dream Select Realty. You can find us on X at Dream Select Homes. If you want to be part of the program, email us at hometeam@dreamselectrealty.com, and you could always go straight to our website, dreamselectrealty.com. And just remember, the dream is real. We'll see you next time.